Hi, I'm Trey Parker.
And I'm Matt Stone.
And this here's old Scratch.
Say hi, old fella. We do a show called South Park.
The idea for South Park dates back to 1992, when creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone met in a film class at the University of Colorado. Taking their shared sense of offbeat, absurdist humor, and Trey's slim experience with construction paper animation from his previous film, American History, the two decided to make a short film for the program's end-of-year showcase. That film was called The Spirit of Christmas. The story of four boys in a snowy mountain town was the first glimpse of what would eventually become South Park. Though the animation was severely unpolished, there was an undeniable originality and charm to the story. For their next project, Trey and Matt made the feature-length film Cannibal, a Musical, which was a comedy musical about Alfred Packer, an American prospector who resorted to survival cannibalism in the high mountains of Colorado. That feature film made its way to the desk of then Fox executive Brian Graydon, who loved it and wanted to develop something new with Trey and Matt. After many failed creative ventures, Graydon paid Trey and Matt to remake their animated short, The Spirit of Christmas, so he could send it to his friends in the entertainment industry. The second, more polished short film had more defining characteristics of what would eventually become South Park, such as the look of the main characters, similar sounding voices, and even famous catchphrases.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny!
The buzz created by the short film landed them meetings and an eventual TV deal with Comedy Central. South Park made its premiere on August 13th, 1997, with the episode Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, and practically became an overnight success. The premiere was watched by just under 1 million people, but by the season's end, over 6 million people were tuning in to watch. Through the years, South Park has amassed a slew of awards including Emmys, a Peabody, and even an Academy Award nomination for their feature film, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. And after 22 seasons and hundreds of episodes, South Park still feels just as relevant as ever. And I think there's two major reasons why South Park has remained so successful over the years: satire and structure. South Park has never shied away from talking about hot-button, divisive issues, including political and religious controversies. But they're able to approach these topics from a unique perspective without always coming off as preachy for a few reasons. By setting the story in the fictitious town of South Park, Colorado, the creators are able to strip away limitations that a real town might have. When a story takes place in a fictitious town, the creators are then able to mold that town to whatever the story calls for. Every week, it's like another blank canvas that the painter can use to tell their story. Think about other fictitious towns in pop culture, like The Simpsons' Springfield and Parks and Recreation's Pawnee. Since those towns don't exist in reality, they then can become a mirror to our own reality. They're used as a vehicle to communicate satirical topics and ideas to the audience. It's similar to the everyman character found in literature and dramas, where the everyman character is devoid of definitive marks of individuality in order to create a universality in the moral message of the story. Just as the everyman character allows the audience to identify themselves, the fictitious town of South Park allows the audience to identify their own world and existence. South Park becomes a petri dish in which satire can grow. Instead of everyman, it becomes every town. South Park has been an effective satire over the years also because they don't pick sides. No single demographic has been made the constant butt of the joke. Everyone gets an equal share of humble pie, both liberal and conservative, and every single religion has been equally mocked at some point in the show's tenure. Instead of being forced to choose a side of the argument, Trey and Matt have always resolved that all sides are wrong and the argument is pointless.
Well, what I think of our best stuff comes out is we try to personify this side of the argument and this side, and then we take a little funny way out.
Right.
There's a groupthink, and you only get to some new truth by argument and by dissent, and it's like some of it is just, we just play devil's advocate all the time.
And by not picking a side and making a stance, audiences across all demographics find themselves getting mocked 1 minute, but then feel vindicated when they see another side getting mocked moments later. When everyone is a target, it's easier not to feel singled out. South Park has been so successful over the years not only because their episodes contain satire, but because their episodes contain proper story structure. The rule that Trey and Matt use in their writer's room is called the but therefore rule.
We can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed. Between every beat that you've written down is either the word therefore or but. Should be this happens, and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens. You get a show that feels like, okay, this to that, to this to that, but this, here's the complication, to that.
Basically, an effective story requires causality and motivation born from the story itself. It needs characters to make deliberate choices that cause action, which in turn forces other characters to make more choices with more actions. A visible line should push through the entire story, connecting all the scenes as it builds to the eventual conclusion. Let's see how this rule plays out in one of my personal favorite episodes, Make Love, Not Warcraft. The boys are playing World of Warcraft, but a random online bully kills them. Therefore, all the kids in the neighborhood team up to fight him, but the bully still overpowers them. Therefore, Cartman convinces Stan, Kyle, and Kenny to train for weeks. Therefore, they all become extremely skilled. Therefore, they fight the bully again, but the bully is still too powerful. But Randy is able to give Stan the Sword of a Thousand Truths. Therefore, they're able to finally defeat him. This might seem like an obvious rule, but not every show contains coherent story structure like South Park. A notable example would be Family Guy.
You think that's bad?
We are not resorting to that.
A show that Trey and Matt don't respect from a writing perspective because a majority of its comedy derives from random gags and cutaways, as opposed to earning laughs from the building events within the story. It's this structured satire perfected over the years by Trey, Matt, and the creative staff that has made South Park just as timely and relevant now as it was back when it premiered in 1997. However, South Park has seen a recent dip in creative quality over the past few years, culminating on November 9th, 2016, with the episode Oh Geez, the day I believe South Park died. Like most cartoons, South Park has been largely episodic in its storytelling format, meaning that each episode is self-contained, with all storylines concluded by the end of that same episode. And South Park has utilized the episodic format since its inception. One of the show's first running jokes was the different ways Kenny would die each week, only to appear the next week as if nothing happened. With the episodic format, each episode is a clean slate. Viewers are able to watch any random episode and still understand every aspect of the show. On the flip side, the serialized format has story arcs and plot lines that span episodes, an entire season, or the entire show. South Park has done multiple episode arcs, such as the Meteor Shower Trilogy, Imagination Land, Coon and Friends, Cartoon Wars, and Black Friday, but in Season 19, the creators experimented with a more serialized approach, what Trey and Matt referred to as serialized light, where certain elements and larger topics carried over throughout the entire season, while still keeping every episode its own contained, standalone story. However, with Season 20, Trey and Matt embarked on a completely serialized story, with multiple interwoven story arcs that would stretch throughout the entire season. It certainly was South Park's most ambitious season to date, but it was also their worst, and here's why. When a show utilizes the serialized format, they have to make sure that every story arc is dynamic and layered enough to warrant so many episodes of examination. If there's not enough material there to tap into and push the story forward, then the show can become repetitive and stale quickly. Season 20 of South Park had story arcs consisting of member berries, internet trolls, gender wars, Cartman and Heidi's relationship, the SpaceX program, and much, much more, all circulating around the 2016 presidential election. But I didn't find any of those arcs interesting enough to warrant an entire season. The storylines were stretched so thin that they became one-note and boring. Most of the arcs were reduced to the same one joke, told over and over in slightly different ways. The 2016 presidential election plotline seemed to have the most material to warrant a season-long arc, especially with the treasure trove of material happening every day on the news. Trey and Matt have never shied away from satirizing culturally significant events as they happen. That's one of the many creative benefits South Park has, as they notably produce brand new episodes within a week. It helps them stay relevant and timely in the ever-changing cultural landscape. In past seasons, South Park was able to turn around new episodes in less than a day that revolved around presidential election results from the night before, in the episodes About Last Night and Obama Wins. But even Trey and Matt couldn't keep up with the unpredictability of the 2016 election, and that's the biggest reason why Season 20 suffered. For a show that's known for always having its finger on the pulse, it was impossible to keep up with the 24-hour news cycle of the 2016 presidential election. Before they could produce an episode about an event from the previous week, 50 new things would happen in that time. With constant twists and turns, the biggest twist was the one Trey and Matt never saw coming: Trump actually winning the election.
What have you done? You maniacs!
When the Mr. Garrison Trump hybrid character was first introduced in the season 19 episode Where My Country Gone, the creators never took Trump seriously as a presidential candidate. In interviews, Trey and Matt talked about how they wanted to comment on Trump in that episode before he quickly dropped out of the election. They never imagined he would become the Republican nominee, and then a year later in season 20, the creators still didn't think it was possible that Trump would ever get elected as president. So when they began outlining the storylines of season 20, they did so with the assumption that Hillary Clinton would win. Even on the actual voting day, Comedy Central was still running promos for the next day's episode that was then titled The Very First Gentleman, clearly assuming Clinton's victory.
Last night, our country changed. We now have someone in office who can bring about gender equality and put an end to sexism.
But once Trump was elected, the season's entire trajectory, with its already set conclusions, had to be changed rapidly. And that included having to rename the episode Oh Geez.
I know that many of us were shocked to the core with last night's election, but we cannot allow our school to be any further divided. It is time to try and start the healing process.
But when they had to alter their already set plan, they were forced to break their own writing rules. Now, instead of linking scenes and character motivations together through trace causality, they were forced to take some plot lines in directions that weren't natural to the story, and they were forced to drop other plot lines altogether, since they didn't fit the story being told. Through the first half of the season, Mr. Garrison slowly comes to the realization that he's a fraud and that he would make a terrible president.
I mean, I'm not gonna just get elected, you know, and look like a jackass. I had no idea I would get this far, but the fact of the matter is, I should not be president.
It was an engaging and even sympathetic character arc they were creating for Mr. Garrison, but then after Trump won the election, Mr. Garrison's arc was jerked in the completely opposite direction, and he reverted back to being a smug jerk. The character motivation didn't come from the story itself, but came from the real world, which South Park was forced to follow. The same thing happened with the Memberberries, J.J. Abrams, The Gentleman's Club, Butter's War on Gender, and other storylines in the season. Their storylines fizzled out, or were just abruptly altered due to the course correction. Since the creators were constructing the entire interwoven story around the assumption that Hillary would win, the unexpected victory of Trump rippled throughout the remainder of the season, leaving season 20 muddled, incoherent, and a big disappointment. And it's clear that even Trey and Matt weren't happy with the final result, as they titled season 20's final episode, The End of Serialization as We Know It. But the effects of Trump's election didn't stop with season 20, they spilled over to season 21 as well. The show went back to a largely episodic format and had storylines that focused more on the four boys again, which gave the season a more lighthearted tone, but the overwhelming presence of Trump in the news left the creators not exactly sure how to handle their Garrison-Trump hybrid. In a number of interviews, Trey and Matt talked about how they were experiencing Trump fatigue. Trump dominated the daily news cycle, offering more and more topics worth satirizing on the show, but they were through talking about him. They didn't want South Park to become CNN or another news program simply talking about Trump time and time again. But Trump is a social media phenomenon that's impossible to ignore. They brought back the Garrison-Trump character in the episode Sons of Witches and Splotty Tomato, but it's clear that the creators still didn't know what to do with him. The character was only supposed to exist for one episode, and then it was a season arc, but now he's just around. The character doesn't have a clear purpose anymore in the story. There's no joke to be had. But for a show that's always prided itself on being culturally relevant, simply ignoring Trump could come across as tone-deaf or out of touch. It appeared that South Park would be creatively stuck for the foreseeable future, but the creators were able to course-correct a lot of issues in season 22. The Garrison-Trump character was completely absent from the season, except for a slight glimpse at the end of the season's final episode, and with the creators not focusing on Trump directly, they were able to remain relevant by still commenting on the cultural, political climate of what it means to live in modern-day America with Trump as president. Also, they went back to the serialized light format that worked so well for them in season 19. This way, they were still able to have standalone episodes with their own beginning and end, but character choices and certain jokes from previous episodes still rippled quietly throughout the remainder of the season, such as Stan wearing his Tegrity Farm shirt, Kenny still living around the abandoned ruins of Soto Sopa, and the not-so-subtle reminders of the frequent school shootings constantly happening at South Park Elementary. It's the kind of storytelling that rewards devoted fans who watch every episode so they can catch the nuanced jokes and reoccurring gags, but it's not so convoluted and interwoven where a single episode can send the entire season spiraling. Which is exactly what happened on November 9th, 2016 in the episode, Oh Geez, the day South Park died. Entertain the Elk puts out at least 2 new videos a month, so if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe below. That way you don't miss any new videos whenever they come out. This video has been almost a year in the making, so I really hope it was worth the wait, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please like it below. Leave me a comment also. Tell me, when do you think South Park died? Or do you think it's still great today? For those of you who haven't heard the announcement, I also want to let you know that I've launched a new channel that's called Quiet the Elk. I announced it in my unboxing video last month, and I go more into my intentions and heart behind it. So feel free to check that out if you want more in-depth information. And basically, the channel is just me reading. That's me reading everything from books, poems, screenplays, and even reading weird things like Craigslist ads or 1-star reviews on Amazon. And the intention behind it is that it's something for you to listen to quiet your mind, to relax throughout your busy day, maybe to help you fall asleep if you have a hard time falling asleep. This channel isn't going to be for everybody. I know that it's not video essays, but if you have a hard time going to sleep, or if you enjoy ASMR content, if you like finding ways to just kind of relax and meditate throughout the day, please click the link below, go check out the channel, and see if it's for you. Thanks again everyone for watching this video. Again, I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was worth the wait, and I'll see you all next time.